4 years later, we're 43 people, 24 million, 1 million profit. And what's the name of the brand? And they'd go, it's the one that does this. No, it does this. And they would be stuck. And that was not every person, but it was a significant number of people who couldn't name the brand of a product they were using every day and they paid over £100 for. Early days, reached out to Jony Ive and sent him a toothbrush. Not for a PR stunt or anything. It was just because I wanted to know what one of the best designers in the world thought of our product. He responded.
I'm Eric Fulweiler, and this is Scratch, bringing you marketing lessons from the leading brands and brains, rewriting the rulebook from scratch for the world of today.
Today, I'm joined by Gyve Safavi, co-founder and CEO of Suri, a London-based startup that's taking on $30 billion oral care industry. Now, if you live in London or in the US, you probably would have seen Suri kind of taking over the shop shelves in Boots or Target and Walmart. And also for me, especially, I've definitely seen them kind of taking over my YouTube algorithm with all of their performance ads, which I'm seeing on the YouTube pre-roll. And I actually quite enjoy the ads, which is very rare for me to say. Now, Suri actually ended up on the Brands to Watch report that we just released for 2026 here at Rival. So if you haven't seen that yet, please do go and check it out. But on the back of that, we definitely wanted to have them on the podcast to really understand and get into how they've built such an incredible brand in such a short amount of time. Now, Gyve spent a decade or so inside Procter & Gamble working on brands like Gillette before moving actually into the agency world and working with like behemoths like AKQA and WPP. So with Suri, he's really rethinking the electric toothbrush from the ground up. Very design-led, built fully to push back on all the category conventions that we've kind of grown accustomed to, all the Bluetooth sensors and all that stuff that no one actually uses on an electric toothbrush. They're pushing back against all of that and rethinking everything from the ground up. Now, this really, really reminded me of how important it is actually just to have creative conviction, honestly, when you're building a challenger brand and building something that does disrupt the category, and how much value that adds to your marketing and also your brand loyalty as you start to scale. Now, we really dig into the brand's origin story and how they truly built from customer pain points, and also why Jony Ive, yes, that Jony Ive, sent Gyve a late night text message about Suri when he had first launched the brand. We also get into what's coming next for one of the most exciting brands in the space right now. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation between Gyve Safavi and me at Rival. Gyve, welcome to Scratch.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Viren.
Awesome. Well, no, we're very, very excited to have you on the show. Suri is one of those brands which has just been kind of all over my news feed, all over my YouTube feed for sure recently. And I've been kind of obsessed with just like the way the product looks, honestly, for the past year or so. Recently, it really came to light, obviously, in the Brands to Watch report that we just dropped. Suri is on that report as like one of the brands that we think is going to do super well in 2026. So I think this conversation is really timely and I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Amazing. Thanks so much for having us and the kind words. One of the things I always say is that retargeting is not very expensive. So if you've already seen us, and you see us a lot of times, the retargeting component doesn't cost very much.
Yeah, definitely want to get into more of your performance mentality around the marketing angle of what you guys are doing. But to kick off, Gyve, one of the first icebreaker questions that we always ask every single guest since the first episode of us doing this is, what's one challenger brand or rival brand that you're really passionate about right now and you can't name your own?
I wouldn't name my own, although I'm very obviously passionate about Suri. I guess I would say there's so many out there, and I'm going to choose a London-based brand because we're based here in London, although we have a large portion of our business in the US as well. I would say Yoto, probably. I have two young daughters. They're huge fans of Yoto. My wife and I are as well. They've created a really great ecosystem to get kids away from screens. It's such an integral part of my daughter's life, like it's part of a morning routine when she wakes up a little too early and we want to sleep in. So yeah, I'm massive fans of what Ben and the team are building there. And I think they have a long way ahead of them in terms of growth still.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Yoto. We've been trying to get them on the show as well. I think they've really, like, in this generation of like, we've all been worried that the next gen are very addicted to screens. So they've really figured out something really interesting. Them and I think Tony's is their sort of main competitor,
also,
right? but both doing
And
really, really great stuff.
both doing really well. Yeah, both really good brands. It's amazing there are, I shouldn't say this, but there aren't more brands in the space.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conundrum, not to take the conversation in a different way, but like marketing something that kids find engaging, but you're really marketing to the parents, right? And like that subset of products, like there was the little suitcases for a little while, which you would see, you
The
go to the
trunky.
airport and like, yeah, trunkies. They were all the rage for a little while. And I thought they did really well to get that into the
It's
hands
such
of,
a sweet spot. Like parents have to like it, and so do kids, and it's that intersection that it's so hard to find.
yeah, it's a really interesting one. But yeah, definitely trying to get Yoto on the show sometime soon. Um, cool. So can you give us just a quick overview for what Suri does for those very few people who might not know what you guys do?
For sure. So Suri stands for Sustainable Rituals. We launched around almost 4 years ago with a view first to make an exceptional electric toothbrush that would clean your teeth really well. So championed a high performance clean, was design led. So it was an enjoyable experience. I know enjoying brushing your teeth sounds odd, but that was definitely part of the challenge we wanted to address. And then last but not least, pushed sustainability in terms of how could we be more sustainable as a brand and future focused and really encourage others in the industry to follow us. We've evolved today, and our goal ultimately and our mission as a company is to be a wellness-focused brand in oral care, really using those three pillars of design, performance, and sustainability to create something that people really enjoy in their house.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things. I think that's a really good segue to the first chapter we've kind of laid out here, like the design-led sustainability. I don't know where this actual like moniker came from, but the Apple of toothbrushes. I've seen that kind of phrase floated around on different places like Reddit forums and things like that about Suri. Is that something you guys have intentionally kind of lent into, or it's just kind of happened on the back of what you've done?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. That's a massive compliment to us. If we are anything like 1% like Apple, that's something that we feel really proud of. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of Apple since I was growing up in the 80s, which is the time when they weren't very famous or they weren't doing as well as other companies like Dell. I'd say if people are comparing that to us, there's a lot of influence we stole from them, right? I think the generation of the iPhone where, and that was some of the things that we really took to value when we were starting, that like the experience in which you open a product and use it has to be as good as the functionality. And I think Apple have definitely led that path for many brands to follow. So if we are seen like the Apple of toothbrush in any way, we do take that as a massive compliment. I think we have a lot to learn still, but we would very much be happy to hear that. We also, early days, as I mentioned, I've always been a huge fan of Apple, reached out to Jony Ive and sent him a toothbrush. It was not for a PR stunt or anything. It was just because I wanted to know like what one of the best designers in the world thought of our product. And he responded shortly after saying, absolutely love them. Well done, guys, with a huge smiley face, which is probably one of the most busiest inboxes now, you can imagine. But yeah, my co-founder and I got that email, I think, at 10 o'clock at night. And we were just like a bunch of little kids sitting in bed, like ecstatic, because as a brand, like if you can get that validation, even on a private level, it's so rewarding.
Yeah, that is just an amazing story of like early validation, right? You've made really deliberate choices clearly to go with industrial design and like make sure that the industrial design looks really great on the shelf, but in the hand and like, what people are using. So to get that validation from basically the best industrial designer in the world is awesome early days. It must have really doubled down the thinking for both of you at that point.
Yeah, definitely. So from day one, and maybe we'll get into this a bit, like we designed the product ourselves. We owned the design registration, we re-engineered it, because a big thing for me was we did a lot of research early on. I had this hypothesis that the brushes were big and clunky in an unnecessary way. And so I must have bought, for my sins now, we recycle all our brushes and everything, but I bought 50 brushes and tore them apart, trying to understand why were they so big and clunky. I'm not an engineer, but the first thing I realized was they didn't need to be that big and clunky. They had this much padding around the motor, and now it's kind of like, it just feels like it's a traditional shape that people stuck with and never really reconsidered it. And then I worked with an industrial designer in California, a man named Dylan Feltman, who then moved to London to become our third employee. And so since early days, we've believed that really owning the design and functionality of our products is paramount to creating a better experience.
Was that insight just completely random? Like you were just walking, looking for a new toothbrush, and you thought, like, this toothbrush that Oral-B does or another brand doesn't look great? Or did that come
So
from
there was,
somewhere?
so obviously I mean, being a fan of Apple, my dad's an architect, so I grew up loving with a huge appreciation for design. I can't draw for my life. I still can barely write. Like if you get a card from me, you can't even read what it says. But I've always been a huge fan of good design and appreciated it. And we were early on. I was like, this could be made nicer. This just doesn't feel right. And as we started doing our research, there was a few seminal moments that my co-founder and I had. One of them was that there's a huge sustainability problem in the oral care industry. Toothbrushes aren't recyclable. I mean, there are some places you can send them off to if you are able to find them and get postage and do it, but most people don't. And the kind of thing that stuck with me was every toothbrush I ever owned probably still exists. They're made with multiple composites, polypropylene, silicone, nylon, and those composites, while they are recyclable if individually separated, they can't be separated en masse because it's just too small and too much effort. So the cost completely outweighs the sort of like benefit of recycling that material. So most municipal recycling facilities just get them and throw them out. And so for me, as we were starting early on, I said, if we're going to create a future-focused brand, and actually I think probably ties in with my first daughter, who is 4.5 now, being born, I said that we have to create a brand that really champions the next generation, that is doing something more than what competition is already doing, going beyond just making products that you sell, really considering the impact of what they have. And we're far from perfect, and we say that on our sustainability page. Like, we're not perfect, we know that, but we're evolving, and we consider sustainability as one of our core principles in which we create products. So we're always optimizing for it. We track our carbon emissions and we offset them. Whether you believe that's a good thing or not, the reality is, because we pay for our carbon emissions, just that simple function, as a business, we want to minimize that. So we want to minimize our cost expenditure, and that forces us to be better in what we're doing. So that was one of the sort of seminal moments where I was like, I want to make a better product, but the sustainability angle has to be considered as well. Yeah. And then we did a lot of research with consumers. We didn't have a lot of money, so the first thing I did was I paid for overpriced share reports that I thought a lot. I mean, it was probably $5,000 to $6,000, and at the time I was like, "Am I going to pay $6,000 on a share report?" But I have I started at Procter and Gamble, and so did my co-founder, and so I guess we were very share driven in the sense of like, who has what. And what we discovered was there's two brands that in electric toothbrushes dominate with 75% share in the UK, in the US, in most developed markets. And so obviously as a startup, you're going, well, hang on, there must be huge barriers to entry here. Do I really want to take this risk? Like, there are many other brands that exist on Amazon, but when you look at the real big shares, there's only two duopolies that are controlling the markets. And of course, being sort of hungry for disruption, I was like, yeah, of course we want to do this. But we tried to be as risk averse as possible, in the sense of, if you're going to take risks, get the best picture you can in the market. And so we did a lot of consumer surveys. And this is where I asked questions about sustainability angle, design. And one of the things that I was quite shocked about was the things we got back from what people were saying. Oh yeah, my brush battery completely sucks. And then I was like, do you use the Bluetooth app? And they're like, absolutely never. I mean, maybe there was 1 out of 100 that did. And so we realized, well, let's optimize for battery over a Bluetooth app, because it sounds like that's what people want. And they also said I can never travel with it because the battery sucks, but the charger is also this big and funky. It doesn't work with my phone charger. And so that was a kind of a no-brainer. Make it work with what you already have. And then there's other things. People complained about this gunk that builds up whenever you're brushing your teeth under your head. So we added a stainless steel plate so it's easy to clean it. And then we have this a mirror mount, which we put on mirrors, which just keeps it from like sitting on your counter and building up gunk there or in a cup. And subtle things that we thought, it's business 101 in a way. Listen to what your customers say they don't like and try to design for it. And so, I would say there's one more point on that really got us excited, which is, in the qualitative interviews, I would ask, do you use an electric toothbrush? Yes, I do. What did you pay for it? Oh, I paid £110. Okay. And how often do you use it? Well, I use it every day, twice a day, except when I travel, because it's too clunky to travel with. Okay, and what's the name of the brand? And they'd go, it's the one that does this. No, it does this. And I was like, I don't know that brand. What is it? Because you don't want to prompt and give it away. And they would be stuck. And that was not every person, but it was a significant number of people who couldn't name the brand of a product they were using every day and they paid over £100 for, which told me that this familiarity or high share was really more through availability than brand love. And if I could disrupt on brand love, I would have an angle in. And a lot of people tell me, like, nobody's going to love a toothbrush, Gyve. Like, nobody's going to talk about a toothbrush. It sits in your bathroom in the cup. Nobody looks at this. Don't you want to go into something like clothing that people will see and there'll be a lot more word of mouth, no pun intended. But here we are. And 4 years later, we're 43 people. You can probably see this on Company's House, but we did in 2024, 24 million, 1 million profit. Last year, we're still closing our numbers, but we've had significant growth on that. And then this year, we're looking to keep growing very fast as well, which is always easier said than done.
Well, no, definitely. You've definitely achieved that goal of like making it something which consumers are now talking about, including us, like people who are trying to get you on podcasts to talk about exactly how you've grown such a phenomenal business in such a niche, or not even a niche space actually, because everyone, like you said, everyone uses a toothbrush. So it's actually a mass market product, but just not something that you would have ever thought people are going to talk about regularly. On that point of brand love, like I just wanted to ask a slightly deeper question on there. Like we've noticed definitely from looking at all the different challenger brands that we look at on a day-to-day basis, like there seems to be this real clear divide between like when a brand decides, okay, we're going to like pursue this sustainability pillar, oftentimes like design is kind of left as a secondary thought. And that means like they're able to access and create brand love with a very specific group of consumers who are very sustainability driven, but not necessarily with the mass market who are just kind of like, if I can do good, like sustainability wise, I'll do it, but it needs to be easy kind of thing. It feels like you guys have really bridged that divide really well.
So that's a hot topic for sure. I mean, it's the sustainability compromise. Like I'm going to use a bamboo toothbrush, but it doesn't clean my teeth very well. And I was that person when I was using a bamboo toothbrush. My dentist told me, get an electric toothbrush. What are you doing? And you're kind of stuck because your heart wants to do what's better for the planet or use better materials, but then at the same time, your health is important. And I think for our category, that's very true. But if you look also at like other categories, I don't know, sheet soap, sustainable, but it crumbles and I can't wash my body with it. So there's that was one thing we wanted to tackle. Like, how do we make a product that's more sustainable without compromising on the experience? Your dentist tells you go and get an electric toothbrush and you don't want to, although it's better for your teeth and better for your health. And there are numerous studies that show that. So we thought, how do we be more sustainable with what we're doing? We've designed a product that has plant-based heads. Our heads are made out of cornstarch and castor oil bristles, fully plant-based bristles that we collect from our consumers at our own expense. So they put them into a pouch. We take them back, we grind them up, and we recently did a partnership with Reborn making soap dishes out of the heads. So this takes about 18 heads. It's 100% made 100% out of our heads. So it's fully recycled. Because sometimes when you recycle things, there's a virgin material and something else added. And that was a way that we've always, from the beginning, we said we're going to collect our heads, we're going to grind them up, and we're going to turn them into new things. So to create a secondary life for them. At the same time, our brushes, if anybody's brush breaks, we always take it back and recycle it for them. Mm-hmm. We are in a category where products are used every day. So eventually they don't have an infinite life. But what I would say for us is it wasn't the pursuit of perfection, because if you try that, that's impossible. And I think sometimes when you say sustainability, people either think, as you said, crap product. And so sometimes when we communicate in the US, the first thing we say is high performing, right? Because sustainability is the secondary message. Because mainly that we've all tried a lot of sustainable products that are crap on the performance side. And then the other one sort of thing that happens is when you say we're trying to be more sustainable, is people say, I don't believe you. Greenwashing. And they don't want to believe, and they just discount anything you say to them. And I think that is where we're in a world where brands are trying to be more sustainable, and through sort of skepticism, they can get negative reaction. But also there are sort of new industry standards that are coming out, and ASA's use of how you can say anything sustainable is getting tighter. And I think there's a lobby of larger companies that might be pushing that agenda
Yeah.
in the sense
Yeah.
of like, this is not true, it's fake. And then as a result, we don't have to change anything. And I would say like for us, the most important thing when we were making a product was it has to be a good product. And keeping that in mind, how do we then make trade-offs on materiality choice? So we have an aluminium handle that can be recycled by us. And how do we make design choices when we're engineering so we can make this product better?
Mm.
And that's how we see sustainability. It's one of our core pillars. It's not the only pillar. And because we have that healthy tension of design experience, so I say design experience because like, yes, it can look beautiful, but it actually has to feel good in your hand and achieve the other elements and be practical in its environment. And then performance, like it has to clean your teeth. We're in a healthcare category. If you're not doing that job well, then it's kind of like you don't really value the whole category. And then the last is, but not least, the sustainability. And so what we pride ourselves is we value those three principles on the even setting. And I would challenge other brands that are looking to be more sustainable to do that. I used to work at larger companies where sustainability was an afterthought. You have your product, now let's make it more sustainable. And when you've already gone through the whole development cycle, then the only thing you can probably change is packaging.
Mm-hmm. It just becomes then like a bit of a marketing tagline at the end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I think Susan,
so,
yeah. Susan from Here We Flow, the sort of wellness brand as well, they were also on the brands to watch for 2026.
very cool
She has this great moniker around like, you know, when it comes to sustainability, we're dark green inside, but light green outside. So they don't ever lead with that messaging because they realize, kind of very similar to what you're saying, that actually that's often not what the mass consumer cares about. They want a product that works really, really well first. And then if it's sustainable, great, added benefit. But yeah. One thing that I wanted to touch on as well, actually, in that world of like, you guys are definitely a very like sort of brand-led marketing function. At least that's how I characterize it from looking at it from the outside. But obviously, naturally, I've noticed that you do a lot of performance marketing, especially the YouTube ads and things like that. How effective have you found that in today's sort of climate?
Well, I mean, I would say very effective. So we wouldn't be a brand if we couldn't use the performance channels today. Because when we started, nobody wanted to list our product. We're lucky that now we have a great relationship with Boots, and we've gone into Target in the US across 500 stores, and we're also in Currys and Best Buy and a few other retailers, Planet Organic. But in the beginning, it's quite hard to get listed in a store when nobody knows you. Like they don't want to take the risk on you, especially as I was saying, in our category where there's two dominant players who've been around for a long time. They would be apprehensive, and so would I, right? So we started on Meta, and that was actually the first channel, Meta and Google Search, and we actually started with landing pages that talked about our product, but didn't have it for sale, and said if you're interested, sign up to learn more. We collected emails. Now, at that point, you can already do a lot of variation in your marketing. You can test your messaging. You can lead with sustainability. You can lead with performance. You can find different hooks. You can change your landing pages. And so already there, you can get really good insights. Like, hey, guys, the ones that are converting are starting with this messaging. This is the audience that's actually clicking through. And that helped us shape a lot of our early doors on performance marketing. And then as we've gone on, it's a bit of a science and an art form because at least on Meta, because the content is scrolled so fast, you need to break it down into the way, like the way you can, the hook, the middle, the close segment. But ultimately, like at the basis of our performance marketing is storytelling. And we talk about our features, but we're trying to paint a story that people resonate with. You know, like, do you have that toothpaste gunk that builds up? You know, does your brush die after, I don't know, every couple of days? Like, would you like a longer battery? Do you ever travel with your electric toothbrush? So the pain points that we heard from our early customers, we were able to put them into ads and then to really see what resonates and evolve it over time. So performance marketing has been a big part of our brand marketing. And where we are now is we're moving actually to above the line marketing. So we did our first London Tube campaign in October last year, and then did a Christmas campaign as well. And that performed really well. I'd say the good thing about starting with performance is you can really shape your messaging without spending too much.
Yeah.
You can grow awareness. We then listed, after about a year, we went into Boots, and actually that was because our Meta and Google and YouTube ads had built a level of awareness in the UK and people knew us. And from there, we were able to grow. Not everybody's able to do that because we have a price point that enabled that. CPAs can be quite high if you're selling maybe drinks, but I challenged to find ways around that, bigger baskets, et cetera, et cetera.
And are you guys kind of doing your performance function fully in-house, or are you working with agencies? How do you do that?
In the beginning, we started, so I knew a bit about meta advertising and setting up a Shopify site, but we started with a freelancer who helped us on our ads. And then we worked briefly with an agency, and then we built the team in-house. And I think there are many models that you can take to go to market. Sometimes brands are very retail. We're omni-channel now, and we're very aware of that. But sometimes brands are very retail focused, and meta is something, or just performance is something they want to have on top. Sometimes it's a core engine. For us, it was a core engine, and there was a lot of nuance that we needed to understand. Yeah. So building the team in-house to do the variations, and it was a full-time consuming role where things were constantly changing every day. That made sense. With influencers, which we work with, we have part in-house, and we work with agencies as well.
Awesome. Yeah, you mentioned actually, like you touched on a bit about your sort of background at P&G, and like your background has obviously given you that deep subject expertise, but also like just a wider view on like how to market a successful brand as well. I know you spent a bit of time at AKQA and WPP as well. So like, I really like to dive in there and just try and understand a bit more about like, what that background has given you in terms of building a new brand. Like you're already breaking a lot of conventions that you would see in the category with Suri. But if you were to like rebuild the entire personal care industry from scratch today, knowing what you know now about supply chains, consumer behavior, all that type of stuff, like, is there any specific industry standard that you would immediately just be like, get rid of that? Like that doesn't serve the consumer of today.
Ooh. Oh, there's quite a lot to unpack. I would say, yeah. I mean, on the breaking the rules, I started at Procter & Gamble, like traditional school of marketing. I did finance and marketing there on Gillette. I actually sat next to the Oral-B team, and I was pop over and complain about things to them. They didn't like having me over. But it's a great school for learning the fundamentals of brand marketing, and I'm very grateful to have started there. There's a lot that I've learned. But I mentioned in the beginning that my father's an architect, and so I have a huge appreciation for design. He was a designer and an architect, and one of the things that I guess really he told me early on that really resonated with me throughout my career was that you need to know the rules to break the rules. And he's like, you look at any great sort of artist or designer, like they started probably in a classical setting to learn the structures and the rules. And he's like, if you have a building that has a curve, you have to know foundational elements of how to build structure, and that you need 4 pillars, because if you're going to remove one pillar, you need to know the foundations that you can remove and you can't remove. And he's, Picasso started as a portrait artist, very detailed, not the Picasso that everybody knows today, right? And so you need to start with the fundamentals to be able to do things differently. Otherwise, you will not know what you're removing and why you're removing it, and you might get it right, but you won't be consistent. And so I would say that kind of has been something that I did start with classical sort of marketing. Then I went to AKQA, which is, I would say, like forefront of digital ecosystems.
Yeah.
And the whole idea that the intentionality of everything you do with your brand is visible, but also a willingness to accept that you're a continual work in progress. When we started our brand, I wasn't proud of it. Like you can see a lot of the early posts. Like it was, as I said, I can't draw. I'm not a designer. I know what I like, and I could only work with the budget I had, and tried to beg favors here and there from people. And our industrial designer, luckily, I convinced to join. But like the best advice I got was, I always knew that I wanted to be a work in progress, but you don't realize it until you're actually doing it. And the best advice I got was from a designer who said, a friend also, who said, hey, you might not like your brand now, but that's okay. The most important thing is that you are living the work in progress. You are continually improving with the insights you get from consumers. But if just accept that you're work in progress, but don't forget that you have to still do work and progress. And so those are kind of the two things that, I'm okay with where I am now, I would say, because I know I'm doing more to make it better all the time. Yeah, we discussed, and she was like, look at Airbnb. Like, look at their first logo, clouds. If you look at a lot of brands when they first started and like their branding, it wasn't perfect. They were very good at making their proposition well-rounded. And that way they were able to evolve the branding and get to something much better. Look at our early ads; it's slightly clunky, but we continue to evolve. Coming to your question on, is there anything I would change in the industry? I would like there to be more openness and structure around sustainability. We offset our carbon emissions. We publish this all in our reports. We are very open about that. I would love for, as an industry, we say we don't compete on sustainability. Like, let's just be transparent. I'll share my formula that's better here. I'll tell you how I get packages at a lower emission for the environment. I'll be very transparent about that. I won't just build storytelling sustainability reports that don't really say much and the data's hidden. So let's be transparent. Let's have that initiative maybe pushed by the government. I don't know. But how do we make it so that we don't compete on sustainability? Because that's what really supports future generations. We're working on new things in the sustainability, like around our materials, and some of them will be proprietary. But I'm going to release the formulas against probably like what a lot of people will tell us, because like this stuff should be public. We should make things that are, and also we're not perfect, right? And so we might have something that unlocks value, but I'm pretty sure other competitors will also. And we compete on all the other vectors, but let's not compete on this.
That's really not the answer I was expecting, but it's such a great answer because it's so unselfish as a brand, honestly, to like want to do that and like raise the whole industry standard, as opposed to just like kind of building your own brand and business, like to be the biggest like Goliath in the room, essentially, which is really cool.
I mean, we still want to be the biggest Goliath. We want to be a household name brand, but like we don't need to compete on sustainability.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It should truly become like table stakes, right? Like everyone should be a sustainable brand at some point. And was there anything specific from your time at AKQA, WPP that really taught you a bit more about like the consumer behavior? Like you mentioned, AKQA has been on the forefront of like what consumers want and like designing for those consumers for the past like 2 decades. Was there anything that you took specific from there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like the intentionality of what you're doing, like whether it's like the size of your logo, everything, the way you're looking at it, the way you describe your brand. That AKQA was very detailed. I got to see a lot of great work, and they did very cool ecosystem work, which is something we always wanted. We want to create an ecosystem where people come to us not because we sell just a toothbrush, but as we launch more products, they'll be like, I love the way you think, the principles you hold, and when you go to create something, what you bring all together in it, that they will want to buy more things from us. And there are very few brands that create that sort of brand love. But I would say that inspiration, definitely, there was a huge part at AKQA, at WPP, seeing larger brands, how they did things, and being able to, because as you grow, everything breaks. Like you double in size. We doubled in size last year, and people, everything breaks. Structures that were working because you sat next to 5 people and could ask for things break, and you need to rebuild things. And having worked at obviously larger and corporate companies, but when I was at WPP, over 300,000 employees, they service some of the largest corporate companies on the FTSE. It's just, you have a huge opportunity to see how structures are done and things that work and things that don't work, right? And so that's, again, coming back to my whole thinking of like, you need to know the structure to grow, but you can also break the rules once you know them, particularly around innovation too.
Yeah,
like speed of innovation.
Yeah. Do you feel like the speed of innovation piece is like a big thing for you guys? Like you're always trying to just like update what you're doing? We
are, and I would say we're like, as a founder, and nothing's moving fast enough, right? Like every week feels like a month. I have this sort of like, I never said this before, but ever since I've been at Suri, that I have this sort of like lack of ability to understand time. Like I'm like, I asked about this, like, like something was like 2 days ago. I'm like, oh, it's taking forever. And then something that was like 6 months ago, I was like, oh, that was like yesterday, wasn't it? Like time doesn't have structure for me, because I don't know, maybe I'm doing too many things. I have 2 young kids too. But yeah, so I would say one of the things for us is how do we launch, great products that people love, but do it as fast as possible, because we want to grow and maintain momentum. But when I was at larger companies, that was something that could take 5 to 10 years. And I think that sort of risk of when it takes too long from an insight to a product launch is that the insights that you wrap up with when it comes to launch are no longer relevant. Take, for example, Bluetooth apps, right? Like maybe a really great idea 10 years ago, but by the time you brought the product to market, nobody wants another app. This needs to be embedded in the phone. Like this technology and this idea and this insight is no longer relevant.
I love that thinking. Like that's something that Eric, the CEO of Rival, I'm sure he's going to resonate with that a lot. And me as well, like just in terms of the media side of the business that we're building, we always feel like things are not moving fast enough. And I can definitely resonate with that. I think you've characterized it better than anyone I've ever heard characterize it, to be honest.
Thank you.
Cool. Now switching gears a little bit, like thinking a bit broader, like you mentioned and touched upon, Boots, Target, all those types of now retail spaces that you're going into. You're now competing on the shelf basically against, huge incumbents who have hundreds of millions of dollars to spend.
Yeah.
How do you compete in that environment? Like what are kind of the core principles that you've gone into that, specifically retail environments with?
So I think for us, we're very fortunate, particularly in the UK, to have really strong retail partnerships. My co-founder leads our commercial efforts, but I would say one of the things that he really invested in early on was relationships. So just before we think consumers and what they see and everything, it's, at the end of the day, retailers are people. They are people who run the business. They have a lot of insights on the category, so you can't rock up and say, hey, we're going to do great. Give us the shelf space. Just put us there. Trust us. Like trust is a relationship built thing. And so early on, when we got into Boots, we were given a space, and our goal was, how do we prove to you that we can be really efficient with this space, that we can maximize turnover with the sort of facings that we have, so that you want to give us more space, that this makes sense for you. Because they run a business, right? There are two legacy brands that have a lot of space, and we need to show them that we can be more efficient with our space so that we can grow further for them. And I would say that is a big thing for retail across the board. It's Rome wasn't built in a day, brick by brick. Build a relationship, build the trust. And trust is like delivering what you say. And so before you go, many people think that retail is just about being there and it'll sell. There's a huge awareness factor. You need to build up that awareness so that when people go into store, they're not like, never heard of this brand. Like obviously packaging has to do work, but you can't, and displays and being disruptive, there's a huge part around that. Like, how can I do things differently? We are fortunate that when we get our out of box displays, like our product is significantly differentiated from a look point of view, metal handle, slim, and that people will be attracted to that pure differentiation of design. But there's a huge part around success in retail being building a relationship with somebody, delivering what you commit and growing it over time. And, sometimes like we build relationships with retailers, no joke, 1 to 2 years ahead of listing, because they, it's similar to actually what we did with our investors. So early on, like I went out to some of the top VCs and I was like, I need money, gonna make a great product and a brand, trust me. Of course, they were like, have you done this before? And I was like, no. And I was like, yeah, cool story. Come back to me when you've made $1 million. And I was like, I thought you invest pre-seed. And they're like, you've never done this before. This is a huge risk. Why would I want to put? And so I was like, okay, I hear you on that. What do you want to see more? And they're like, well, show me what your numbers are. And I was like, we're going to get to this in 1 year. And they're like, great. Okay, sounds good. But I didn't walk away like from the nose. We stayed in touch. I was like, hey, how's it going? Hey, by the way, yeah, we've done this. We've now done this. And so by keeping that relationship and feeding it with updates and news, and hopefully good news, right? Like, don't be like, oh, by the way, that shipment got lost, like total mess. But anyway, we're moving on. Good news builds trust, and trust is the foundation of relationships. And that's why we were able to get some really great. Early on, we had Salica as one of our first investors who did believe in us and this pre-product, which is amazing, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. But we also are fortunate to get some other investors along the way who we started relationships with around the same time. So the Jam Jar, V3, DMG Media, and a great set of angels that also took the risk on us.
Of course. And when you think about like, building that relationship with the retail buyers is one thing, but then in terms of like when you've now translated that brand story of yours that, you were able to do, like you said, online, you can have the landing pages, you can figure out what messaging works. How did you like translate that brand story and also the education around the product on the physical shelf? Did you have to make significant changes to the packaging? Did you have to change like the way the shelf was laid out? What did you do that was distinctly different?
So I will start that with, we are still a work in progress. Right? And I think that's what people need to, We are evolving our brand, our packaging. We are testing new packaging now that communicates to a shopper who may not know us, because the reality is you have such a small amount of time to tell people stuff in store, and there's a lot of noise that you want to be disruptive, but you still need to communicate beyond sort of the media that brings you in, that you might hear outside the store. Because if somebody just comes to the store and not know us, would we win them over to pick up the product? That is the big question. So we're continually working on that. I would say early days, like our displays kind of took some of the messaging we learned from Meta. People care about the slim performance, the aluminum handle, the plant-based heads, and the free recycling. Those are features, but they also care about our UV cleaning case that sterilizes your brush when you're not using it. The USB-C charging. These are also features that we tried to show, and so a lot of it, like to be on the design side, just showing the product does a lot of communication. So we push as much as possible to have out-of-box display, but we're totally a work in progress. We're far from perfect. And there's always so many tensions that go on internally, right? So if you care about something, there's always a committee of people who disagree, right? So, but nothing is done by committee. So we take risks and we try to evolve as we go.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always translate, right? So because if you buy it online, packaging might need to be slightly different.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely something which other challenger brands are finding, like kind of making that step change from D2C into retail is, it's completely different, because you are faced with like customers who have never seen you, never heard of you, and like they're just a split second choice now. So totally. You have to try and communicate.
And if you look at our packaging, like now it's really clean and neat, right? But if you were far away from shelf, would you see anything other than the product? And this text is really, really small. So we know we debate this all the time. We know where we can improve. Like the logo clear enough. Well, when they put it on shelf and there's a little like dip in it, like you don't even see the branding. So it's like some no-name brand. But that we are really critical, I would say. So we're more critical than others. But one other thing that I wanted to say on that is you're saying really nice things about us, and I appreciate it. And I'm saying that we are our own worst critic. But early on, people were like, "What's your brand? I don't get it. I don't get what you guys do. Like, it just looks a bit weird." So we went through phases where we were like, "It does look different, but we don't think it looks weird." We're trying to make a more premium oral care brand that focuses on things that others aren't mentioning or focusing on. Like, of course, we also deliver a great clean, but that's not the only thing we do. And that concept in itself was met with a lot of, let's say, potential investors or other people who were like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. You need to really learn how to do that better. And we were like, okay, yeah, we'll keep improving, but we're pretty happy with what we're doing. And so I think sometimes you just have to also stick with what you think, because it just takes time to evolve. And you don't have to listen to what everybody says.
Honestly, I think that's one of the strongest points, and one of the things that I believe most strongly, especially sitting here in 2026 recording this in a time when, like now, I think creative taste has always been this thing which is very subjective, and most people don't have it, I would argue. And the few who do have it, they really push for it and they are very strong about it, right? We've all worked with creatives who are like, yeah, I know you're giving me this feedback on this design, but you're wrong. Like, this is the way it should be designed. And we know how frustrating it is, but at the same time, they have the ability to distinguish between what is differentiated and what is the same. And now we're living in this time where, like, with AI tools, like we just did this whole thing a couple of weeks ago, actually, with the chief brand officer of Gymshark and then Susan from Here We Flow. And it was all about, like, how do you actually develop creative taste to stand out in the age of AI slop? Because now with all these tools, everyone has like the same floor basically of like what they can create. But that just creates a convergence point where every brand, let's say every oral care brand will have pretty much the same prompts and maybe the same insights. If they put that in and say, create me a brand, most of those brands are going to look very same. Like, they're going to look like some different shade of vanilla. But actually, to get to that next step where you are differentiated, you kind of do want those people who are like, I don't get it. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. You don't understand it. Like, and you have to be brave enough to do that.
I mean, look at Here We Flow's packaging, right? Like, how disruptive is that? And I think that's the point, right? That you need, as a challenger brand, you need to take the risks and sometimes redefine the paths.
Definitely. Now, we're coming up on time, so I do want to make sure I ask about this. Like, you featured on the brands to watch for 2026, but what is next for the brand? I know you guys are thinking about more share of the daily rituals. Like, what's coming this year? What can we expect to see from you guys?
So, if all goes to plan, and I say that as any founder would know, that like plans change all the time. Making mistakes is kind of like a way of living. We have quite a few things launching this year. So, and our goal is to continue developing products that people love in the oral care space, which champion our pillars of design, performance, and sustainability. But if I was to take out our corporate sort of mantra and sort of just say it in plain English, like, we want to make products that people love, that they enjoy, that redefine their rituals that they have every day. We recently so I obviously haven't told you what we're launching. I can't tell you, but I can tell you it's not just what we have right now. There are things that go well with our products together, but there are ways that they've never been done before. And because we've designed them from the ground up, we know that the performance level is good. So we've designed everything in the product inside out in terms of what we're launching this year. And there's a couple of things that we'll be launching in a couple months. So let's say from the summer onwards, early summer. And we know that if we can continue to create products that have a great experience, a good performance, and push the boundaries of sustainability, we have a right to sell more products to people. We recently took all of our Trustpilot reviews, so Trustpilot, the independent review website. You also see all the negative ones on there. Like, there's no way you can get rid of them, despite what we'd all want internally, because there's a customer who's like, it never showed up twice. We're like, it's still not our fault, but we'll solve it. And we ingested into ChatGPT, so you exported it all. And the number one sort of key sentiment word that came up among all the others was love. And as I was saying in the beginning, like, who loves brushing their teeth? For us, that was something that made us all feel really proud that like we've managed to make people say they love our product or love the experience for a category and a habit that not many people have said in the past they actually love.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gyve. I'm going to finish off with a quick lightning round, if that's okay. These are just super short, sharp answers. I'm going to run straight into it. So, Gyve, first one is, if your brand were a pizza, what type of pizza would it be?
It'd probably be a vegetarian pizza with fake meat. We don't want to be too sustainable, but we all can probably eat a little less meat, even those who love meat. So let's get a really good fake meat like Beyond Meat that can fool you.
Sounds good. What's the best campaign that you've seen recently?
I like Venterior's You're Better Than Flat Pack. They've got some really cool out-of-home campaigns that they had up for a while, which was all about like how invest in what you buy and you're better than sort of like self-assembly and cheaper products. Okay,
cool. I haven't seen that one, but I'll definitely check that one out. I like some of the stuff that they're doing in other parts of their marketing anyway. What's your biggest pet peeve in marketing right now?
I don't have a lot of time to see more things other than what I'm doing, but I'd say probably the one thing that we try to avoid is trends. Like the video that's like we sometimes can avoid it, like formats and Meta, like, oh, everybody's doing the founder video. And so somehow I'll turn around and like there's a founder video of me going up being like, I started Suri because of this, and I'm like, oh, I try to avoid that. Like, I think it's better to just do your own thing.
And final one, what's the advice that you would give to your younger self as a marketer?
Don't listen too much to others, right? Like as you're growing up, like you really anchor on advice, especially as a founder. And I anchored really heavily on advice from people who were more senior, maybe had stronger career paths, more money. And I would just say, like, don't anchor too much on that. Anchor on yourself, on what you believe in. And it's so important. Like I generally was, I don't want to say I had imposter syndrome too much, but like I constantly was like, well, they said this, that's probably the case. Like if your gut tells you something is right, try to stick to it and get, as much insights as you can around it, but don't anchor too much on what others say. Believe in yourself.
Awesome. Well, Gyve, that wraps up our conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Viren. Appreciate it.
Scratch is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with me, email me at eric@wearerival.com or find me on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.